All right, so I'm gonna get started and I'm gonna try and keep an eye on the waiting room at the same time so people don't get stuck there. But welcome everybody. I'm so excited to see all of these faces tonight. My name is Amanda Tobin. I'm the Associate Director of Education at Mass MoCA. And I have had the immense privilege of working with this group of young people over the course of this fall on the curriculum takeover for Black Lives Matter. And before I turn it over to the group who are really gonna lead tonight's event, I just wanna do a little bit of housekeeping. We're gonna do the first part, the first hour or so, the group will present on the curriculum takeover, and then we'll open it up for a Q&A at the end. I'll send a follow-up email in the coming weeks with all of the curricular resources that the teams have been working on to you after tonight. But first off, before we get started, I just want to let everyone know that Sean Leonardo, who's the artist who's been facilitating this program, is unfortunately unable to join us tonight. He texted us today saying that he has contracted COVID-19, and while he's doing okay, he wasn't quite up for an event tonight. So he sends his regrets, and I hope you all will join me in wishing him a quick and speedy recovery. If folks have questions pertaining to his work at the end, our esteemed Director of Education and Curator of KidSpace, Laura Thompson. Laura, you want to wave? She's here tonight. She worked with Sean curating the exhibition for Mass MoCA, so she can answer some of those questions later. So first, I'd like to have all of the curriculum takeover participants introduce themselves, and then I'll speak for a little bit longer about sort of contextualizing the event and the project, and then turn it back over to them. Because Zoom is clunky, I'm just going to call on them alphabetically and have them introduce themselves that way. So, Ornella, would you go first?
Hi, I'm Ornella. I'm in 12th grade. I go to Taconic High School.
Thank you. Chelsea?
Hi, my name is Chelsea. I'm a senior at Miss Hall School.
Kenna?
Hi, I'm Kenna and I'm a junior at BART.
Yuki?
Hi, I'm Yuki and I'm a junior at Miss Hall's.
We have Maddie Gordon. I don't think she's here yet, but she's a jury student who's been participating as well. And Tessa?
I'm Tessa. I'm a sophomore at Pittsfield High School.
Wiley?
Hi, I'm Wiley Jones. I'm a junior at BART.
Faith?
Hi, everybody. I'm Faith. I'm a sophomore and I'm homeschooled.
Miguel?
Hi, I'm Miguel. I'm in 8th grade. I go to Joy High School.
Sadia?
Hello, everyone. I'm Sadia Queddy. I am a 12th grader at Pittsfield High School.
Abby?
I'm Abigail. I'm a junior at BART Charter.
Hazel?
Hi, everyone. I'm Hazel. I'm a senior at Mount Greylock, and my pronouns are she, her.
Ella?
Hi, I'm Ella. I'm a freshman at Miss Hall School.
And last but not least, Kaylin.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kaylin. I'm a Miss Hall's junior.
Awesome. So big round of applause for all of those amazing people. So this summer, just to give a little bit of background, Mass MoCA agreed to show Sean Leonardo's drawing series, The Breath of Empty Space, which opened in September and closes at the end of this month. The drawings represent Black men and boys who have been killed by police or whose lives have been affected by racialized violence. And to give a little bit of background about Sean, he's a multidisciplinary artist whose work negotiates societal expectations of manhood, namely definitions surrounding Black and brown masculinities, along with notions of achievement, collective identity, and experience of failure. In our planning conversations with Sean this summer, he emphasized the fact that engaging with the public and especially with youth is a core part of his artistic practice. And so out of those conversations, we developed the idea for the curriculum takeover. And the goals for this program was to put youth in charge of their own and their peers' learning about Black Lives Matter and about racial justice. Many of us grown-ups in the room recognize the ways in which our own schooling led to gaps in knowledge, false information, internalized, externalized biases. And though many school teachers and administrators have been making great gains in the past years, especially since the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement, it's clear that there's still work to do. So the 14 youth who participated in the program have come together from, as you heard, across many different schools in Berkshire County. And somehow over Zoom and across time and with all of the sort of strange situations of distance learning and COVID times have created not just a radical arts-based curricular intervention, but also a community with one another. They've supported each other, disagreed with each other, collaborated and connected in ways that serve as an incredible example of coming together to promote justice and equity. I'm so proud of them and grateful to be able to learn from them. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Hazel.
Thank you, Amanda. So I'm reading from a couple of notes so I stay on track, so don't mind me looking away a little bit. All right, so as a group, we agreed, oh no, the screen just disappeared, excuse me. As a group, we agreed that the education we receive of Black history is extremely repetitive. Our textbooks only talk about the struggle of people of color, beginning with slavery and continuing into the 21st century. We hear the same stories over and over again, portraying Abraham Lincoln as the person who ended slavery and MLK as the person who ended racism, when in fact, we can all agree this is far from true. We seldom hear of the stories of the kings and the queens who ruled vibrant countries in Africa and the West Indies before the slave trade began. We hear only of the most notable Black leaders, and the curricula we learn from restricts teachers and omits the Black stories that are critical to the narrative of American history. As these inaccurate narratives are repeated to students, or rather as so many narratives are left out, those impressionable minds, our impressionable minds, the students, we lose focus of the deeply troubling reality that is our country and socio-political climate right now. And this group, my peers here, we want to fix that. We started with a couple of leading goals. Firstly, in this curriculum takeover, our goal was to create a lesson plan that speaks to the pain of Black experience, but still uplifts and celebrates Black life. Keeping that in mind, we created a 2-part lesson that will allow teachers to bring missing conversations into the curriculum in a creative way. And I'll hand it off to Faith to elaborate on that.
Thank you, Hazel. I just want to thank, first off, everyone who has been a part of this curriculum takeover, because you all have amazing voices and each have a unique point of view in this matter. And I want to thank everybody coming today as well, because it's really important that we all tie together and we think about the lives that we've lost and the lives that we can save through actually teaching our children the truth about our world. And I think it's really important that we start with kids our own age, because you start with the base. And I just like to thank everybody so much. Amanda, sorry.
Amanda, I can riff on the slideshow if you'd like.
That'd be awesome. Thanks, Hazel.
All right, so our 2-part curriculum begins with a slideshow, which features images from Sean's work, the Breath of Empty Space exhibition, which he has in Mass MoCA right now. You should go check it out. I put in my notes, shameless plug, you know, his work's awesome. And with this, we also provided close looking prompts that can be used to aid discussions about Sean's work. We actually looked at Sean's work together as a group, and we thought of questions together, and I think it's a pretty good list. And then the second part of our curriculum, is the individual art making prompts for the classroom. in which we featured our own work, not as cool as Sean's, but pretty close. And we have 3 different prompt sections, one for poster making, one for mask making, and one for creating a mural. And I want to emphasize that all of our art making prompts are inspired by the conversations we've had on Zoom the past couple of months, where we've examined our educational institutions to expose places where learning about Black lives and Black history has been omitted. So, yeah. There, I'm done, sorry.
So the poster group, you want to sort of introduce this activity and then we'll go through your samples?
Wiley and I are presenting for this. So Wiley, if you wouldn't mind starting, I guess, or I can start.
Oh.
If you...
Sure. So one of the big projects we thought up was doing posters based on important Black historical figures or modern figures who have made a difference for the world or for us, and focusing on not only their struggles but their big accomplishments, really finding like a whole well-rounded view of them, I suppose. A big thing we did was we made a template for people to use. Oh wait, Amanda, if you want to go down to the template. And this is like a little, you know, thing to show like a well-rounded view of the figure you're focusing on. And if you want to pull up some of our examples, we made a few of these for, you know, like little sample posters.
Yeah, Ella, you want to introduce yours?
Okay, yeah. So hi, I'm Ella again, if you don't remember. So for my example poster, I chose to focus on the power of Cece McDonald. And if you guys don't know who she is, she's a transgender and Black rights activist, and especially being an activist against the injustice that's in the prison system for trans and Black people. So her story is that she and her friends were attacked in a bar by transphobic people and like a transphobic man and his friends. And in self-defense, she fought back because he was blocking their way out of the bar, and she killed him because, you know, he was attacking her. And most people, like a lot of white people, get self-defense and get off on self-defense for this, but instead she was put in jail for manslaughter and sent to not 1 but 2 male prisons instead of female, which is what she identified as. So like I think the most important thing about these posters is trying to show the complexities of these Black lives and all of these activists while not victimizing them, because a lot of the time in textbooks it's always, oh, they're victims, and you know, like we said before, Abraham Lincoln ended slavery, these slaves were all victims, they didn't do anything for themselves. Like that's a generalization, but that's a lot of what like people can take away from that. So what I wanted to do, and I think what the idea of this poster is to change that view. So I tried to include aspects of humanity and trying to humanize Cece, because a lot of the time in the media, the humanity gets lost. So I tried to focus on like she studied fashion in college and just kind of things like that, as well as focusing on the good things that have happened because of the injustice against her and how she rose up. So as you can see, she was awarded a Civil Rights Award, as well as a whole movement sparked, Free Cece sparked from her. So I think it's very, very important for these posters to focus on just like not all the bad things and try to come up with more. And I really like the format, so shout out to Wiley and Abigail for coming up with that. It's very, very good, because I think it's very simple and very concise, which I think is very important, because simplicity can help people I know for myself, it's hard to come up with ideas when there's no bounds to it, but this format can help kind of guide you along. So instead of having too many ideas, you can kind of focus it into one, as well as I feel like it's going to be easier to teach because then, you know, you can see everything in the same way. If students maybe are very, very passionate about another way, then we have some examples of that, but yeah. So yeah, that's mine. And if people want to talk about their sample posters, go right ahead.
Yeah, so as you see yours on the screen, just unmute yourself and say as much or as little as you want about your poster.
This was my little sample poster about Bessie Coleman. She was the first Black female aviator. Or I think the first Black female aviator. And she faced a lot of discrimination from her field, but she pushed through and she became a very famous and inspirational figure for a lot of people. I thought that was interesting.
Hello, everyone. So for my poster example, I chose to do Frederica Newton, and she was a Black Panther, and she joined the party in 1969. And I chose to use her as my poster example because the Black Panther Party is something that I have never been taught and that I have not heard about in school. So I had to go out of my way and teach myself Black inspirational figures that are powerful and strong and made a difference in history that I didn't get the opportunity to learn about in school. So I created this black and white portrait of her, specifically with black and white to draw attention to the reason why in civil rights, all the photos are usually monochrome. And that was done to convince their audience and to convince everyone now that the civil rights is a thing of the past and a thing of the distant past. And that it was so far long ago when really it was not that far long ago and the work is not done. So thank you so much for being here, and I will pass it on to the next poster maker.
Hello. So I did Brian Stevenson, who moved down to Montgomery, Alabama, and started like an organization down there to help all the people that were on death row that are wrongly accused and put on death row for no reason. And he fought for them and got them out. I did them because I watched the movie. And on a day-to-day basis, you don't really hear about like lawyers. You mostly hear about like celebrities. You hear about like the Dr. Kings and like Malcolm X. You don't hear about lawyers like that. So that interested me. And he dealt with segregation as a kid. As he got older, he didn't know what kind of law he wanted to study. He went to Harvard. He freed a lot of people. The discrimination was getting worse in Alabama. That's like one of the racist places. Also, some major accomplishments that he had was he tested the bias against the poor and minorities in the criminal system. He freed over 135 wrongfully accused prisoners. And the Walter McLean case, which is the one that's in the movie, that was like one of his big first cases. That made him who he was too. He banned being on death row or on life imprisonment if you were under 18 without parole, under 17 without parole. He started his own practice. And like his impact on the world is like, I don't know, to me it's like, be honest, the corruption, like it focuses on corruption, and it doesn't matter how much you can afford. Like he helped everybody, he helped the poor, he did all for the community. In fact, for the change you want to see is what I thought about it. And also my template is different from everybody else. I didn't really know how to like position it. That's why it looks like that. But yeah, I did Brian Stevenson. Yeah, I'm done.
All right, thanks, Ornella.
Similar to Ornella, I didn't really know how to work with technology, so I have a little bit of a different outline following the general concepts, but I did a project poster on Florence Kennedy, and I focused on her. I chose her because I'm familiar with Gloria Steinem, and I look up to her. She's a great role model, you know, activist, strong woman, and Flo Kennedy played a similar role in history, but I had never heard of her before researching her. And there we see, I guess, another story of a Black individual being omitted from history. She's also a pretty awesome person. She has so much spunk, and I wanted to emphasize that through the colors I used in my drawing. She was the second Black female in history to graduate from Columbia Law School, and she became a lawyer. And among lots of protests that she led, she established a media workshop, and she protested specifically against companies that didn't feature, I think companies that didn't hire Black individuals, but I think, or didn't feature them in advertisement. I can't really read this well, but she also wrote a novel, which I hope to read. It was a memoir, excuse me. And she defended women's rights, reproductive rights, and overall, a pretty awesome person.
So I chose to do my poster on Joanne Tall. Before I talk about her, this is another poster example that we came up with. It's a little more like of your traditional poster. The other one has cool hexagon shapes. This one's just got a few boxes, but it's got the same information in it. So Joanne Tall grew up on the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota, which is one of the poorest counties in the nation. And like a lot of reservations, the government wanted to set up nuclear testing and a waste plant on their sacred land. And the elders of her tribe were going to go along with it because they needed the money since they were so poor. But Joanne fought against it and led protests against it because that's their sacred land. And she won the Goldman Environmental Prize for it in 1993, and then went on to teach younger generations about the land and was a really cool environmentalist.
So this is my poster. Again, I chose to kind of take a more traditional approach. I decided to highlight Madam C.J. Walker because I never really learned about her in school, but I kind of did my research outside of school because my mom was telling me, you love hair products so much, like this is where you need to know, like you need to know who she is. So I decided to do some of my own research, and she was the first Black female self-made millionaire. And there's actually a documentary on Netflix right now about her life, which I encourage everyone to watch. It's really, really good. It's basically talking about how she climbed her way up and now had this huge empire that originally began at like a flea market and was then in like every single drugstore around the country. And I just thought it was a great example of a Black success story, especially because, as stated before, we learned so much about Black struggle, but not about Black royalty and Black excellence and Black accomplishments. So I figured she was like a really great example of what that looks like.
All right, thanks to the poster group. So Faith and Miguel, do you want to talk about the masks?
Yeah, I'll start. So let me show the mask. Mine is the second one. If you want to go to the image. Okay, so here it is in person. I added a little bit of detail. So the mask represents how just kind of social media and media like glamorizes and makes everything seem pretty and nice, and how it makes this whole movement seem fine. And it's really not. And you really have to delve deep to understand that. And it also shows people how people have like false ideas. If I wrote in here, criminal monster deserves it. And that shows how kind of uneducated people can like show like what they say that, and it's like really not true. And I feel it's very important to educate people about like Black Lives Matter and like do actual research. And that's what I'm hoping to tell all of you, and maybe convince some of you to, I don't know, teach something about it or anything like that. But yeah, this mask is really easy to make. It's plastic, so it's easy to make and stuff like that. Just glue sticks and paper, stuff like that. So Faith, do you wanna talk?
Sure. So for my masks, I did paper mache instead because Miguel and I were talking about the age groups. So he made a plastic mask, which will be easier for little kids if they want to like redesign theirs, or if they don't like how it came out, they can always make a new one. And I made paper mache. I thought for older kids they could make this because instead of making it like a day-long process, you can make it like a week-long study of African American history or the BLM movement. And in my masks, I made political masks. So in this one, I put the word media with the word me emphasized because of greed, and I also put dia, which means day in, I think, Latin. And I also put the duct tape over the mouth to represent white silence. So this mask is, it's actually wearable because you can actually see out of it and things like that. And I think this is a really good idea for like older students who want to have an artistic chance to like learn while actually making a piece of art they can bring home with them, and then they can share it with their friends and family as well. And I also made this other mask too, which actually is a little different. It's the same paper mache mask, but I painted this one instead, and I actually added on the sides, I put words in the Twi language, which are leadership, wisdom, and I believe courage. So I put them in the Twi language with washi tape and Sharpie on there. And I wanted it to harken back to African American war paint or war masks. And I wanted it to also look a lot more like, I wanted it to represent like now as well, and the BLM movement and racism as well. And this is a really great idea for anybody who's an art teacher or has a kid in their class who really likes to like paint or just do art in general, because it's a really great way to learn. And I think this a really great way to learn is through doing, not just the posters are great, but if a kid does not really like to write, or if they're more tactile, this is a great example of a thing they can do to still be a part of the experience, but they can do it through art.
All right. Thanks to the mask group. Who wants to introduce the mural activity?
I can, because I don't know if I have an example on there. So for the mural group, we wanted to work on something. For the most part, we did come up with many designs, but we wanted to do something that incorporated contribution from everyone in the community, that almost brought everyone together to make one thing and to show community and unity. And we came up with lots of different things, and I won't go into too many detail because I'm sure people will explain that in their examples. But we did things like people will paint their own section and everyone adds a little different part of it. Or we have other designs, like people take their own square and they make whatever they want and they get artistic with it. And yeah, I can pass it on to whoever wants to show their design.
Thanks, Tessa.
That's mine. All right, so I saw the mural idea as an idea for collaboration, something like a collage of everyone's ideas. So it's like an artist collective, but not just for artists, because I wanted to show community. So basically everyone gets one brick that they just paint, like anything related to Black Lives Matter or any important Black figures that they know about, or even like a representative of their own Black culture if possible, like a flag or something. Like they would have freedom to learn about new people and ideas in the process, or just show what they really wanted to show. So the colored bricks there are just examples of what it would look like, but the whole thing would be a lot more colorful. And there's a shatter in the center to symbolize like breaking down walls and barriers. But the wall in specific is the lack of formal education that we actually have on Black lives and their history. So the bricks behind shows all the information and emotions that everyone expressed through their artwork. So then you can see what's created and what can be created if we actually get educated. Because if we don't change anything, we're just going to be building up the same wall over and over.
Thanks.
Hi. So I had two ideas for my mural. One of which was a large scale community painting of one black figure that's lesser known in history. So for the first example, my idea was, once again, I included a brick wall because I guess that's the base for community things that I guess we all think of, because that can be like a really interactive space for things, as well as be either public or in a school setting. So for the first example, the idea is to find a lesser known black figure and their accomplishments and things of that sort, and provide an outline for the person and fill in the colors. Excuse that I guess that would require less time and less people, which isn't necessarily like what I'm hoping for. So in the second example, I included this sort of idea, but in a smaller sense, where side by side, there's a small biography of the person, and then to the right of that, there's a small drawing or portrait or something of that said person. And what we could do is fill up a wall with those. And I think that would be a really good in school community activity to learn more about those lesser known Black figures that did really good things. Yeah, that's my ideas.
Thanks.
So for my idea, I use the same brick wall to symbolize community. But with mine, it's less about your artistic skills and more about what you feel represents you. So yes, you could put a painting on this brick wall, but you could also put sheet music or a piece of writing or a poem or anything that you feel represents you in some way. So then in the end, you have this huge brick wall with all of these bricks filled in, and each one represents a different person, and they're all individual and special in their own way.
So this is mine. It would be like a mural of kind of interlocking paper dolls so that people could customize their own doll with something that represented them, like a flag that they identify with, their favorite color, a phrase that they really like their favorite outfit. Each person could sign underneath their own doll if they would like to. So that way the community would like see themselves literally represented, and it would remind everyone that the people you see around you are important and that they have lives that are complex and vibrant and have people that care about them just like you do. I think the idea that we are all parts of a larger whole sometimes gets lost in like the shuffle of life, and this would be kind of a reminder of that.
Awesome, thank you. Did Maddie join us?
I don't think so.
No, okay. So this is her example, and we'll have some notes in the final slide deck that gets sent out about this, how she took the prompt and took it in a little bit of a different direction. The last piece of this curriculum is that we hope it gets used, right? And so one way that we're asking people to participate is to incentivize implementing the curriculum in your classroom and then sending us the work that your students make. And in April, we'll reconvene, we'll have a reunion and look through the designs and then create a billboard from what we get from the community. And so that'll sort of be up to to the teens, and Sean will help steer that as well. And the billboard will go up in May 2021 at the corner of Marshall Street and River Street in North Adams for a period of time. So hopefully this will keep the momentum going, keep the conversation going. And the slideshow has information about how to submit your work or your students' work when it's there. So I'm going to stop sharing and ask everyone to just do another big round of applause for everybody. You did such a great job. Did anyone have any final words or sentiments that they wanted to express before I open it up for Q&A?
I'll say something briefly. I hope to speak for the group in saying that we hope this presentation speak to you all as teachers. My parents are both educators and they believe strongly in changing the future for younger generations, as in their own students. And if you all agree, we hope you might consider using this curriculum to guide conversations in your own classroom, because I think everyone in this Zoom cares passionately about changing the terrible situation that is our country.
All right. Does the audience, do you have any questions for this group of young people? You can also put them in the chat if you'd like, and I can read them out. Yes, so I'll send out the slides with the submission form to all the participants tonight, send it around to some of the Berkshire County Superintendent's Roundtable and other professional development organizations so that it gets to teachers in the area, and homeschool community is more than welcome. Katie, go for it. Unmute yourself.
Oh, hi, I am Katie Malone Smith, and I am the art teacher at the W.E.B. Du Bois Middle School in Great Barrington. And I just want to thank all the students here today for creating this curriculum. There's a lot going on right now in the world. You guys did an outstanding job. And the fact that, that this curriculum takeover is from you, from the student's point of view, makes it that more important. It makes it extremely relevant. So when a teacher like myself sees what you have created, we are more apt to use these materials in our own curriculum because it's from your point of view. So thank you so much for that.
Thanks. Shirley, you have a question, and Laura, I saw in the chat. You can go next.
First, I would like to congratulate everyone on your creativity and your great work. So I'm curious as to the impact of this project on you and your understanding of the world that we're living in.
I guess I could say something. Hi again. I just know that me personally, especially as a white person, there's a lot of education that I need, and this is like in no way all of it, but this is a way for me to give other people and to help give other people the education that I wish I had in middle school and in elementary school and still in high school, that I really want to have and really wish to have and wish I had. So I think that it's very important to me that little girls, little boys, little everyone will get this education starting younger and younger, instead of having to do the work themselves or reaching out themselves. It'll be there immediately.
May I add to that? This summer when George Floyd was killed, I was sort of forced harshly to look at this situation and really grapple with what I am going to do to change what's going on. And at the same time, I was sort of hopeless and felt helpless because I was like, this is such a big issue. I don't know what a small person, what a singular person, what a high schooler can do to make this change. And then this program offered me everything I think I need to be able to be a part of this movement. And I'm really grateful for that. And in addition, it served as a privilege check because I live in Williamstown. I'm lucky to receive an education here. I'm lucky to feel safe. And those are things that I take for granted. And this helped me realize that.
Thank you.
I have something to add on to that, if y'all don't mind. I'm not from the Berkshires. I actually live in Texas. So it was very nice for me to see the Berkshires community in a different light, because it was like very easy when I first came up there to, I don't know, I didn't entirely feel welcome in the Berkshires when I first got there. So it was nice to see that there were people out there who like cared about something that is obviously very personal and very important to me. Yeah.
Thank you.
I would like to ask all the students, to what degree do you feel if history was told the way it was supposed to be told? What do you view our world would be like right now?
Can
Could I say something first, if that's okay?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people would not be in the powerful position they are in right now. And I think a lot of other people would be in better positions. And I think that this world would be a much better place. And I know that's a really corny thing to say, but it really would be. There would not be so much violence, and there would not be so much hatred and fear, and there would be so much privilege on one sector, and then total like invisibility on the other. And I think it's really important too that right now, everybody, kids, adults, teenagers like ourselves, I think it's important that we try to change this horrible, horrible world, and we try to make an impact, no matter how small. And I think through this curriculum takeover, we've learned a lot about how to be honest and how to learn and not be so like ignorant, even if we didn't even know we were before. And I think if everybody was acting the way that everybody in this group has been, this world would be so much better, and it'd be so much greater to live in, I think.
Can I add on to that? I think that it would cause like less fights and less arguments, because if people knew the information and knew how it was, there would not be as many arguments as there was, because a lot of people are uneducated and don't really know the truth of how bad it was or what really happened or anything like that. They take like false narratives, and I feel like if we learned about the truth, it would be a lot better for everybody.
I agree. I feel like if history wasn't as sugar-coated as it is and told the way it should be told, there would be change. Like nobody would dare try to do what they did before, you know? People would be fearful of what's going on. I agree that there would be change. And it would be less violence too.
Personally, I feel like there would be a lot less of super dangerous things like terrorist groups and like overpowerful like political figures and stuff like that. I feel like there would be a lot less hatred in the world if history, especially in America, was taught empowering all races and lives and things, instead of just white people. I think it's honestly ridiculous, like how we learn like from such a young age, about like the same few powerful Black people and so many white figures, and they weren't actually that good. It's more so they did one good thing and they were raised up for that single thing. When in reality, there was a lot of very powerful, like very, what's the word I'm looking for? Inspiring Black figures. And I think that needs to be taught more. And I think that would so much help out the future generations. in lessening hatred in the world and in this country.
Thanks,
If I could add on
everyone.
just a little bit, sorry. And a lot of parts, a lot of America's history is like really bad and dirty. And I think when people aren't taught that, they get confident in what they think they know. And they think if we weren't taught this, then it's not important. And I think in a way, if we are, we can learn from our mistakes and learn, oh, this doesn't feel good to learn about. We shouldn't do this again. And that's all I have to say.
I have something to add. I think also we'd be able to have a more nuanced view of like both history and humanity, because I feel like there's also this added pressure on Black people to be inspiring at all points of the day. But if we had those stories and like the reality of what had happened in the past, then we would all be able to be our full selves and not have to think about like living lives to be inspiring to other people, but we would be allowed to be human beings and like be inspiring to ourselves only if that's what we wanted.
Okay.
Well, I want to thank all of you. I think you're all very brilliant, and just the fact that you have decided that this was important in your own development and life to really dig into history and know the truths. And the most important word that I've heard tonight is humanity. So I really want to thank all of you, because you've done some really great work. So thank you.
We've got about 10 more minutes for questions, and I see a lot in the chat about the workflow and the process. So I don't know if someone wants to respond to that. And then I know Laura had a question from a while back. So we can start with the process question and then move into Laura's.
So I can start off talking about the process a little bit. So we started like a while ago. I'm not sure exactly when, but we started off basically talking about what we just kind of talked about, the idea of like what we were missing in education, what us personally, like what we felt was lacking. And then we built off of that, as well as looking at Sean's work, and which you guys should definitely check out because it's very inspiring and very beautiful. And kind of coming up with questions that we think could guide us along the path that we wanted. And then from there, we kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? We thought about the ways we could teach things, I guess. We talked about how you could convince someone about your point about like possibly someone in your own family that has misinformation about Black lives, and how you could personally convince them or try to start educating them. And we went from there and kind of went broad with it and decided, okay, now instead of personal people in our own lives, how can we teach many people that have different experiences? And that's how we came up with our 3 ideas. I know for me, I guess I can talk about the posters more because that's kind of what I helped out with. Our idea was mainly about trying to come up with like a simple way for just normal classes, such as like a history class or an English class or an art class, if you wanted to focus more on the art of the poster, to have that be taught in a very simple way that is very like less stressful, but still educational. And I guess if people want to, from the mask and the mural group, talk about their like goal with the way it was taught, they can.
Sure, I can. There's only one other person in my mass group, so it was very easy to like talk and like get ideas. But basically we just really wanted to like show information basically and kind of like teach. And it was like, I don't know, it was like a one-on-one. It was very easy. So the mass group was easy to talk with.
All right. And generally, so we started out meeting once a month, at the end of September. And then as the projects took shape, we started meeting once a week. And the group self-selected into which of the projects that they wanted to sort of finesse and fine tune and make samples of. And Sean was, instrumental in helping ask the right questions to get the projects to the next step, I would say. And I think one of the most interesting moments for me to witness was when he asked everyone to disagree intentionally with what the previous person had said. So sort of exercise in looking for where there was things that were overlooked or things that could be considered in different ways, and sort of getting beyond the, well, I think your idea was good, but I think this, and Sean just said, no, just go for it. What is different, right? So Laura, did you have a question? And then Jamuna had a question about wanting to be a teacher or not, which Sadia answered in the chat. So keep an eye on the chat, everybody, and we'll go with Laura's question and then see if we have a time for Jamuna's too.
Okay, so I won't pontificate on how awesome this whole experience was, only to mention that, wow, this really demonstrates a commitment on all your part when we put this exhibition together at the last minute. And Sean was able to do a lot of this work and all of you were willing to do all this work in a time when it's much easier to, go to sleep or go eat some Entenmann's donuts, as I've been enjoying during COVID. So I applaud you all for keeping steady with very important work that you've done. And my question is really more of a curiosity, which is, how often have you been asked, in what way do you like to learn? Because somebody said that they were really interested, they were able to talk about how they enjoy learning and what they want to learn. So I'm curious, how often have you ever experienced being asked to tell your teachers the best way that you want to learn and what you want to learn?
Also, I just realized we're going till 7, not 6:30, so we do have enough time for more questions. So take your time in responding to Laura, everybody, if anyone wants to jump in.
I could answer that. So I'm actually asked that a lot, and I think it's very helpful. So I think if kids are asked how they would like to learn, I think it's a lot more encouraging to them, because if some kid likes to read more so than have a hands-on project, or if a kid likes math more so than history or so on, I think it's a lot more helpful if they're encouraged to strengthen those the knowledge they want to learn. And I think it's also very helpful, even in this group itself, we were asked, what project do you want to do personally? Do you want to do masks, posters, things like that? And I think it's a really great way to teach kids, because if they have a say in what they'd like to learn, I think it's very helpful to be able to learn in that way.
I could add to that too. I actually haven't, in most of my school experience, I haven't really had the opportunity to actually say what you would rather see and learn. That's why I was so interested in this project in the beginning, because we actually had a chance to change what we're learning.
In my experience, I get asked this question a lot, but nothing really comes of it. I feel like I got asked this at least 3 times already this year. And nothing, I don't feel like what I said has really impacted. We have the conversation with the teacher, and I get that it's hard to individualize, especially when you're teaching bigger classes. But for me personally, I have not really had teachers change or try to help out and keep that in mind. And yet again, it's I understand why my parents are all teachers. I understand, but that's why I really liked this project, because there was so much that we could change about it that personally fits us and the students that will be doing this. And I think that that's very beautiful and very important, because students do not learn the same. I learned very differently from a lot of my peers, and it's very important to have options for students who maybe want hands-on, like the mask, or who do better with words or writing.
As I mentioned earlier, both of my parents are teachers, and in a recent conversation with my mom and one of her friends who's a professor, I was explaining what I didn't like about one of my classes, and they were like, "What? No way, we do that. I didn't know students might not like that." And I'm repeating this story only to say and encourage that you teachers should ask your students how they learn best, and excuse me, let me process my thoughts. Receive feedback open-mindedly. I think that's what I'm getting at. And actually consider implementing some of what students request. So.
Not similar to what other people have been saying, but I participated in this program because I kind of wanted to like get out of my comfort zone. I'm not very artistic. I learned the very basic way. Like I'm such like a pen and paper, like notes type of person. Like that's the way I learn the best. Like someone talking to me and telling me what I have to write down, like I learn perfectly that way. And so participating in this program really helped me to like open my eyes to a more like creative side of learning that I probably wouldn't prefer to learn if I didn't participate in this program. So I do think it's really important to like note to others like how students learn best and what ways you can retain information, especially on a topic like this. So yeah.
So I saw Jamuna had to leave for another Zoom, but she asked if this process had made anyone think about going into education. And so Sadia and Kaylin, I don't know if you want to sort of vocalize what you wrote in the chat or not, or if anyone else wants to chime in to answer that question.
I could. Oh, sorry, you want to go first?
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah, I wrote in the chat, I want to be a lawyer, and this didn't really change that. I still want to be a lawyer, but it made me consider like what teachers do a lot more. Not that like I didn't ever consider my teachers, but just it was a lot more difficult than I thought it would be to, like, when Sean asked us, like, how would you teach this? My brain went blank. And I was like, oh my God, this is like a real thing that you have to consider. Because normally I don't know, when I'm learning things by myself, I don't have to teach it to anyone, so it doesn't like cross my mind. So yeah, it didn't really change my plan, but I think it made me consider like what teachers do a lot more.
To add on to that too, another thing is this class didn't really encourage us to become teachers because really we already are. And even though we do not really have degrees, or I know we're not even like old enough to go to college yet, but I think we've learned a lot in this group even without like going to like actually be a teacher because we already are. And for instance, I've learned so much in this group just in the span of like 2 months. And I've learned so much about the people in this group and people in history I'd never heard of before. And I think it's really important to know that like even though we are not old enough yet, we very much are teachers. And I think no matter who you are or how old you are or what job you are, you are a teacher. And I think that's important to remember too.
I'm just gonna add in here, just to elaborate on what I said in the chat. So in my experience of being Black in a predominantly white community in Berkshire County and growing up with usually white teachers, I've never had a Black teacher before and I'm a senior. So it has kind of made me reflect on what our education system has and has a lack of. And, you know, through this experience, I've really learned that first of all, I have a love for history. And I've learned that there has been a lack of Black history taught. And now I'm going into college and going to study Black and Africana studies. with the goal of one day becoming a professor or teacher to spread knowledge that I never got the opportunity to learn. And I think this is very, very important work. And I'm so glad everyone is here today to be a part of this work. So I just want to say thank you, everyone, for being here, and to continue this conversation as well.
Were there other questions that I missed in the chat or that people are wanting to ask? All right. So we have a couple of concluding remarks from folks. And then maybe we'll just wrap up a little early. So who is it? Was it Ella, Hazel? Who was going to go? I'm forgetting.
Ella, do you want to go first?
I guess I can. I just wanted to say that, like, just kind of a little reminder that even though we're doing this, there's still so much learning that still has to go into it, not just this project. You have to continue learning and teaching about Black Lives Matter and the injustices and racism and bigotry in our world for your entire life. Like, there's never an end goal. Like, you just can't think that after you do this, you're done. And I just want to remind people of that, because I think you should be congratulating yourselves that, like, you're helping this along, but also just a reminder that, like, you will forever be doing this. And that's a good thing, but also, like, just keep that in mind.
Also, that was a really great answer, Ella. I really just want to thank everybody for coming, and this is a really important step towards making our world a better place, like joining together and discussing race and also just becoming aware. I think that's also very important. And I think if teachers and students and just people in general listen to each other, I think that's the first step towards having a more real safe world for everybody in this entire planet. And I just want to thank everybody so much for coming. This was really awesome.
Can I add something? I just want to ask everybody, unless you already have, please, please, please do like some research or learn anything, because that would be nice. Thank you.
All right. Go
May
ahead.
I add one last thing? I'm probably only going to be echoing my peers, but I want to emphasize how much this is just the tip of the iceberg, and how this fight for equality is a continuum and it will never end, at least maybe not in my life. And I have so much respect for teachers, so much appreciation for all of you for being here. Thank you. Have a good night.
All right, everybody. I'll be in touch. I'll follow up in a couple of weeks with the slideshow that has all of the great work that everyone has presented on tonight. And if there are any questions after this event, feel free to get in touch with me. education@massmocha.org gets sent to me, and I can try and answer or put you in touch with the person who can answer. And be well, stay safe, and keep on keeping on. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for everything, guys.
So much.